7. Women's clothing stores that vanished from American malls, and most shoppers never noticed the exact moment they died. Some closed hundreds of locations in a single week. Some still email you today, run by companies that bought nothing but the name. One was sold to the very same private equity firm that already quietly owned the corpse of another store on this list. Here is how they fell, one by one, starting now. Number 1, cash. In 1975, a Brooklyn homemaker named Marilyn Rubinson opened a single boutique and built it into the place American women went when they needed to look unforgettable. Cash was the occasion store. The cocktail dress, the beaded gown, the outfit you wore to the wedding where you wanted to be remembered. It became known for putting European designers like Armani and Versace in front of mall shoppers who would never have walked into a Madison Avenue boutique. That was the whole promise. You did not need to live in Manhattan or carry a Manhattan budget to wear something that looked like it cost a fortune. At its peak, Cash ran more than 200 stores in over 40 states and pulled in $279 million a year. Then it made the mistake that kills specialty retailers. It expanded too fast, reaching around 300 locations, and it watered down the very thing that made it special by chasing casual, everyday clothing it was never built to sell. The evening wear customer felt abandoned. The casual shopper never showed up. The company had not turned a profit since 2011, and on February 4th, 2015, it filed for Chapter 11. Within weeks, liquidators took over every location, and by that summer, all of them were gone. The brand that taught Middle America what an Armani silhouette looked like could not survive selling t-shirts. Cash spent 40 years being the dress you remembered and disappeared the season nobody was looking. The next store sold to a generation of teenage girls, and it shut its doors so fast that employees found out by letter. Number 2, Wet Seal. If you were a teenage girl in the late 90s or early 2000s, Wet Seal was the wall of cheap, trend-right denim and graphic tees that defined the mall. The roots went back to a Southern California shop in 1962. But the chain that everyone remembers exploded in the 90s as fast, affordable fashion aimed squarely at high schoolers. At its height, Wet Seal operated 504 stores across 47 states. It was everywhere a food court was, the store you begged your mom to stop at, the place you bought the outfit for the first day of school. Then fast fashion came for it. Forever 21, H&M, and Zara moved faster, priced sharper, and turned trends around in weeks. Wet Seal cycled through identities: clubwear one season, boho the next, school basics after that, and stopped standing for anything. It filed for bankruptcy in early 2015 and shut hundreds of stores in one wave. A private equity firm bought the name for $7.5 million and tried to revive it. It failed. In early 2017, the company informed its headquarters staff by letter that there would be no more funding, and the remaining 171 stores went dark almost overnight. There was no farewell tour, no nostalgia campaign, just gates pulled down across America in a single week. One day it was the loudest store in the mall, the next it was a papered-over window. The store that dressed a generation of teenagers for their first day of high school could not survive those same teenagers growing up and shopping somewhere faster. The next store on this list went the other direction entirely. It dressed women that the rest of fashion had stopped paying attention to. Number 3, Christopher & Banks. While every other brand was chasing 20-year-olds, Christopher & Banks built an entire empire on the woman nobody else wanted to design for, the customer between 40 and 60 in a town too small for the trendy chains to bother with. It started in Minneapolis in 1956 as Bronze Fashions, went public in 1992, and took the Christopher & Banks name in 2000. The strategy was quietly brilliant. It planted stores in markets with fewer than 75,000 people, places the mall giants ignored, and offered original fabric patterns, real sizing including plus, and clothes a working woman in her 50s actually wanted to wear. At its peak, it ran nearly 450 stores, spun off a plus-size sister chain called CJ Banks, and 3/4 of its sales came from inside those four walls. That strength became the fatal weakness when the pandemic shut the doors in 2020. A chain that lived on foot traffic had nowhere to go. Customers with no parties, no offices, and no events stopped buying outfits. On January 14th, 2021, Christopher & Banks filed for Chapter 11, laid off around 400 people at its Minnesota headquarters, and began liquidating every store. The name was later picked up by a television shopping network, which tells you exactly where its customer went, but the stores themselves never came back. The chain that respected the customer everyone else ignored was the one the recovery forgot. The next store began at a kitchen table in Idaho with $40,000 and grew into a $1 billion idea. Number 4, Coldwater Creek. In 1984, Dennis and Ann Pence left Manhattan for the resort town of Sandpoint, Idaho, and started a mail-order business with $40,000 in savings. Ann had been a copy director at Macy's, so the early catalogs did something unusual. They showed the clothing without models and sold it with warm, descriptive writing. It worked. Coldwater Creek understood a customer mainstream fashion refused to serve, the woman over 40 who wanted to look polished without dressing like her daughter. The catalog became a nationwide chain of more than 350 stores, complete with its own day spas, and revenue that crossed into the billions. The women who shopped there were fiercely loyal, because Coldwater Creek made them feel seen at an age when most of fashion had moved on without them. Then the internet rewrote the rules. The company that had been built on a printed catalog could not pivot to online retail fast enough, and the recession drained whatever runway was left. It had not posted a year-end profit since 2006. On April 11th, 2014, Coldwater Creek filed for Chapter 11 with $278 million in assets against $361 million in debt, and roughly 5,500 people lost their jobs. By that summer, every store was shuttered, and a private equity firm called Sycamore Partners quietly bought the name and the customer list and moved the whole thing online. Remember that name, because it comes back before this list is over. The kitchen table dream that became a $1 billion company sold for scrap before Mother's Day. Number 5, BB. If this kind of breakdown is useful to you, take a second to subscribe. We trace exactly how these stores rose and fell every single week. The next store was the opposite of quiet. It was rhinestones, bodycon dresses, and Saturday nights. BB was never trying to be subtle. Founded in 1976 by Manny Mashouf, an Iranian immigrant in San Francisco who named it after a line from Shakespeare, BB became the going-out store, the form-fitting dress, and the rhinestone-studded logo tee that defined club fashion through the 2000s. It sold affordable luxury glamour to young women, plastered its name in rhinestones across fitted logo tees that became a status symbol of the era, signed Eva Longoria as the face of its Bibe sport line, and at its peak operated more than 300 stores around the world. The problem was that Bebe was welded to one specific moment, the bandage dress, the nightclub, the flashy night out. As fashion drifted toward minimalism and athleisure, the rhinestone aesthetic started to feel like a costume from a party that had ended. Sales slid year after year. Rather than file for bankruptcy, the company made a colder calculation. In the spring of 2017, it simply closed all of its remaining stores across the United States and Canada, around 180 of them, and walked away from physical retail to survive as an online label and a licensing deal. There was no liquidation drama, just an empire of going-out clothes quietly switching off the lights. BB sold the perfect Saturday night, right up until nobody was dressing up anymore. The next store is more than a century old, and the company that once owned it is sitting at the very top of this list. Number 6, New York and Company. This one started before almost every brand you know. In 1918, the Lerner brothers opened a blouse shop in Manhattan called Lerner Shops, and over the next century it grew into one of the largest women's apparel chains in America, at one point running close to 800 stores. In 1985, it was bought by The Limited for $260 million and eventually rebranded into New York and Company, the affordable workwear destination for women who needed to look professional on a real budget. It leaned hard into celebrity, launching collections with Eva Mendes, Gabrielle Union, and Kate Hudson to keep the brand current. But its entire identity was built on one thing that the modern world quietly stopped needing: office clothes. As workwear softened and shoppers moved online, sales fell for years. Then the pandemic forced every store shut at once, and a brand already on the edge had no cushion. In July 2020, parent company RTW, Retail Winds, filed for Chapter 11 and announced it would close nearly all of its roughly 400 stores across 32 states. A retailer that survived the Spanish flu, the Great Depression, and 2 world wars was finished off by an office that went home. 102 years of history ended by an empty parking lot. And that brings us to the store that once owned New York and Company, the one whose name started it all. Number 7, The Limited. In 1963, Les Wexner opened a single small store in Columbus, Ohio, and used it to build one of the most powerful retail empires in American history. The Limited's compact stores became a fixture in nearly every mall in the country, selling sharp, accessible women's fashion, and the profits funded an entire dynasty. Express, Lane Bryant, and Victoria's Secret all grew out of Wexner's company. For a stretch of the 80s and 90s, if you were a woman shopping in an American mall, you were almost certainly walking past a store this one company owned. The Limited was not just a store, it was the engine room of mall retail itself. But as Wexner poured his attention into the brands that became billion-dollar giants, the original store got starved of the very thing it needed: attention. The clothes stopped feeling current. The store started feeling dated. In 2007, it was spun off in a leveraged buyout to the private equity firm Sun Capital, and the magic was already gone. Foot traffic collapsed, fast fashion ate its lunch, and the long mall leases became an anchor. In January 2017, The Limited closed all 250 of its stores in a single move and cut around 4,000 jobs, then filed for bankruptcy. Its name was sold off, and today it survives as a private label inside a department store chain. The empire that gave America Victoria's Secret could not save the store that started it. Which store do you miss the most? Tell me below and subscribe so you never miss the next one.